If you take a look outside, you will see that the spring season is coming very, very soon right here to West Bloomfield. The ice is starting to melt, which can be a good thing, but can also be a very dangerous thing because there have been some incidents in the last couple of weeks where there have been some animals out on the ice that police and fire rescue have had to take care of. So there's definitely a lot of danger at play right now in terms of these lakes starting to melt and this ice starting to thaw. And here was some information on how to stay safe and how to navigate these melting ice ponds. We have Fire Sergeant with the West Bloomfield Fire Department, Blake Belsky, joining us right now on The Splash. Blake, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Really, really good, and really interested in getting into this conversation because spring is coming up very, very soon, and everywhere you look outside, there's not a lot of snow, and the ice is quickly starting to thaw. So what are some of the primary risks associated with melting ice during the spring season?
Yeah, let's not wait for that official spring start date. Weather-wise, we're in it. That ice is going to be few and far between here. And I cannot caution our residents strongly enough against trying to get out on any of that leftover ice for any kind of activities. It is just not strong enough to be reliable to hold any kind of ice craft, skates. It's just too dangerous, and you will very likely end up in that very, very cold water. We just don't want to risk it.
That's absolutely right. A lot of risk factors in play right now pertaining to this ice and a lot of reasons why you should not go on it. And how can individuals properly assess the thickness and the stability of the ice before stepping onto it and kind of testing it?
Well, there are tools available. The DNR has some really great resources as far as their recommended equipment, rulers, augers, whatever you need to do. But one of the points that they do make is that there is no reliable ice depth to assume that it's safe. There are too many factors, whether it's changes in temperature fluctuation or ice that's been covered in slush. Ice that has moving water underneath it is going to melt and be less stable. It's just, I don't want anyone to feel comfortable because an ice is a certain thickness that this is now safe. This is something that needs to be evaluated daily, and even as you move across the ice, to make sure that that ice, even 5 feet in front of you, is still safe as it had been where you were before.
Right, absolutely. Lots of things to look for with this ice. And of course, you don't want to think about it, but inevitably, and in some cases, somebody is going to fall through the ice. There are going to be accidents like this. What should someone do if they do happen to fall through thin ice?
So even before we go out onto the ice, we want to make sure that somebody knows where you are. If you're going to be out on Orchard Lake, tell friends, tell family, make sure you've got a phone with you so that you can so that you can call 911, whether it's a phone or a smartwatch with cellular service. We want to make sure that you can call for help if you need it. The next thing I need you to do, and water is going to be cold, it's going to be really hard to stay calm, but that is going to be vitally important. The more you thrash around, the more exhausted you're going to get. That cold water is going to sap your energy quicker than anything you've ever known. So we want to make sure that you have the ability to stay calm and conserve your energy, because you're going to be there for a minute before help gets to you. Once help is on the way, it's going to take us a minute as the fire department to put on our protective suits. We do have special cold water ice rescue suits that will protect our firefighters from the elements. But it's going to take us a minute to get those on, get out to you, and get you back to shore. So we need to make sure you're staying calm. We've heard in the past that people are worried that their clothing is actually going to cause them to sink in that water. Generally, that is not the case. Your clothing, particularly if it's big, bulky clothes that you're going to wear in the wintertime, that does a great job of trapping air and makes you more buoyant rather than causing you to sink. So you want to keep that clothing on. If you're near ice, odds are the ice where you came from is going to be the strongest ice. So if you are able to make your way backtrack from the area you came from, that will get you to the stronger ice that you can use to support you while you're waiting for help to arrive. Once we're out there, we're gonna throw essentially a pool noodle around you to help you float. We're going to have our special suits on to make sure we don't sink underneath you, and we're going to get you out and get you to that ambulance as quickly as we can.
That's absolutely right. Everything you can do to make sure that they get warm very, very quickly. Sergeant Blake Belsky with the West Bloomfield Fire Department is joining us right now on The Splash to help guide some of the residents through spring safety as this ice starts to melt all throughout Greater West Bloomfield. And Blake, just thinking in your head throughout Greater West Bloomfield, what might be some of the biggest hazard zones in terms of this quickly melting ice?
So now that we're so close to that spring deadline here, that ice is nearly gone on all of our surface lakes. But the lessons that we know from ice safety apply the same to that freezing cold water that we're left with even after that ice melts. So you want to make sure that you are bundled up. If you do end up in that water, we want to make sure that you are able to get out and get dry. If you are covered in cold water, the first thing you're going to want to do is try and strip that wet clothing off of you. If you're still out in the elements, that's actually going to cause you more harm than good. So we want you to get to shelter. Then we want you to get those wet clothes off, get something dry, and then we want to warm you up as quickly as we can. Whether that's getting you sitting next to a radiator, a nice warm fire. If the ambulance is there, we're going to start an IV. We're going to give you warm fluids. We're going to pack your armpits and your groin with those heat packs that you can buy at any drugstore. And then we're going to get you to the hospital to make sure that you are safe and healthy. What we don't want is to have anyone risk refreezing. So we're worried about frostbite. If we think that something's going to refreeze, we're going to let you stay cold a little bit until we can make sure that you're not being exposed to that cold water anymore.
All right, really important information. Blake, thank you so much for talking about this. One more quick question before we let you go. In terms of maybe preparing yourself for next year, when the ice comes back, if you're going to be out on the lakes, ice fishing and whatnot, what is some training and preparation? What should people undertake before engaging in some of these ice-related activities to make sure an accident like this does not occur?
That's great. And the best thing you can do is monitor those ice conditions. The folks that live on or near the water generally have a pretty good idea of the conditions on their lake and their backyard. If you're going to a lake that you're not familiar with, find someone who knows that ice well. That could be a bait shop where you're picking up your worms before you go ice fishing. It could be the DNR websites. There are plenty of resources that are monitoring the ice conditions on a daily, even an hourly basis. So find those resources, find the experts on the ice that you're visiting, and make sure that you have a good idea of what you're walking onto.
All right, really important information for everyone to know for the rest of this year and as the ice returns next year. Blake, thank you so much for joining us today on The Splash Live.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.